Hello, everyone. Welcome to another insightful episode of Kingsgate Brief. This is the official podcast series of Kingsgate Advisors Institute. And as you know, this is one of our platforms to bring leaders, thought leaders, global leaders, professionals, professors, and people that are actually veterans in their field to discuss with us some of the burning and major issues, global issues that are happening, economic related, political related, real estate, climate change, just name it and the like. So we come here, we discuss this and give you expert view and provide actionable solution that will improve your own decision making as an individual, an institution, or even as an economy as a whole. So thank you for joining us again today. And today's episode promises to be very rich and insightful as usual. My name is Uluwabepelu, and I'm currently the executive director of the institute. And I'm your host. Now, in this episode, we are going to be talking about something very critical and something very important, given the event of GDP rebasing done by the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, NBS. We saw a major shift in terms of sectors that are leading to that contributes largest to the GDP. But before I go on into the conversation, I want to take this moment to invite you, if you haven't already, to subscribe to our YouTube page, Kingsgate Advisors Institute. Subscribe, like, follow us, and even turn on the notification bell so that you'll be the first to be informed when we drop another insightful podcast series or major discussion that we have on this platform. You can as well follow us on other social media platforms. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We are very active on LinkedIn. Just search Kingsgate Advisors Institute. Check Instagram. We're on Instagram. And to have a deeper dive into what we do within the institute, to understand how we operate, you can just visit our website. There you have a full glimpse of all the things we do within the organization. Thank you for doing that. All right. In today's episode, as I was saying, we turn to one of the most surprising outcomes of Nigeria's 2025 GDP rebasing. Nigeria, as we all know, recently rebased its GDP, updating the base year to 2019 to reflect more current data and structural shifts in the economy. One of the most striking outcomes was the rise of real estate sector as the third largest contributor to GDP. Surprising, right? Accounting to more than 10% of national output and overtaking the likes of oil and gas when it comes to contribution to GDP. Now, this signals a profound change in not just in the narrative of the Nigerian economy, but also exposes the sector and shows that a sector that was once perceived as a secondary sector is now one of the core and major driver of national output. This new ranking highlights both scale and untapped potential of the sector. Real estate is not just about luxury development or high-value urban properties. It spans rentals, brokerage, housing services, and construction, all which are now better captured in this new accounting framework. Yet behind the numbers lies a sector that can be described as one facing deep-seated challenges. According to data, the sector still accounts for over 28 million housing unit deficit. The mortgage penetration is still very low, accounting for about 1% or less. It has a weak financing structure and the general bottlenecks when it comes to regulations within the sector. These are brought us to fore why it's important to discuss and have a deep dive into what is really happening within the real estate sector in Nigeria. Now, these realities also raise critical questions about how Nigeria can leverage this sector as an engine of inclusive and sustainable growth. Can financing innovation bridge the gap when it comes to affordability of houses? Can regulations and regulatory body be reformed in a way that allows investments to flow in? Can technology be leveraged to see how we can leverage technology, digital platforms, even within the sector and unlock a lot of potentials within the sector? And also, what kind of risks does the sector actually have, does it face, in the short term, in the medium term, and even in the long run? And seeing how all these affect the Nigerian economy. So to explore and to discuss this, I have again today a very, my guest today is someone that is quite personal to me. She's a thought leader. She has decades of experience in this sector, and she's part of our board of directors. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Tomilola Bisileko, who is an edge expert, an ASO Risk corporate real estate strategist, and a member of our board of directors in Kingsgate Advisors Institute. Tomilola Bisileko is a seasoned corporate real estate strategist with over a decade of diverse experience in brokerage, property development, lease and facility management, asset management, and even portfolio optimization. She currently serves as a transaction management at Trillium Real Estate Partners Limited, the Nigerian affiliate of Global Fortune 500 company, where she supports multinational and global clients in achieving real estate efficiency, growth, and sustainability. Her career began at Ubonsi Eli and Co. and later Estate Links Limited, where she managed real estate portfolios and was active in brokerage and client advisory. She went on to West Foster Development Company, popularly known as Cadwell, for those that know Cadwell Limited, where she served as the head of business development and research and technical assistant to the group chairman, playing a key and a very vital role in business strategy and leadership support. Tomilola is also the founder of Bellwether Limited, a growing venture that reflects her entrepreneurial drive and passion for delivering innovative client-centered real estate solutions. She is a graduate of Obafemi Awolowo University with a degree in estate management. She is also an associate of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, that's RISC, and an edge expert, reflecting her commitments to green, environmentally responsible development. She is actively involved in industry advancement. She currently serves as the Assistant Public Secretary for RISC Nigeria. She's also deeply passionate about community impact and development. In 2021, Tomilola founded the Elradin Hope Initiative, a non-governmental organization focused on lifting people out of deprivation and promoting sustainable community development. She also volunteers with the Awesome Treasures Foundation. Tomilola is recognized for her exceptional strategic thinking, communication and research and business development skills, as well as a passion for promoting ethical leadership and driving sustainable growth. Good evening, Tomilola, and thanks for joining me today. I'm so pleased to have you.
Good evening, Pelumi. Thank you so much for that resounding welcome, I'd say. It's a delight, a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Kingsgate family. I'd say it's a joy to be here anyway.
Thank you so much for that. So for our viewers, I want to just sit back. This episode will unpack interesting issues such as why real estate surged after the rebasing. What does it mean for the Nigerian economic structure? We'll also look at how financing models can actually unlock growth within the sector and addressing affordability challenge, which has been a long-standing challenge in the sector. We'll turn to discuss issues related to reforms like the inflation, fuel subsidy removal, the impact on inflation, FX volatility, regulations within the sector, and how it has weighed on the sector's performance. We'll look at the role of innovation and pro-tech approaches in transforming housing and land administration, generally in urban planning. And also we have a take on the outlook of what the sector will look like in the next decade, say 2035. So whether you're a policymaker, you're an investor, if you're a developer, or you're just curious about the Nigerian economy and how it's shaping and how it's growing, this episode definitely provides a deep insight into all these issues and the country's most dynamic and consequential sector, which is real estate. So let's dive right into it. So to start, Tomilola, I'm going to just start from literally the beginning, right? I want to start with what the current state of the sector looks like. So after the GDP rebasing, real estate has emerged as one of the top, in fact, one of the top three sectors contributing to Nigeria's GDP. What does this really reveal about the size and the importance of the sector? Is the sector gaining that much attention as it should? And is it, would you say it's actually overrated, or it's actually a sector that we have not really paid that much attention to, and it's time that is coming to the fore? What do you think about the numbers?
Thank you. So you see, the truth about it is what just happened is something that should have happened quite a while back, because it looks like we've sort of focused on just particular aspects of the sector, and then we've just undermined some other aspects. Real estate is broad and it is fundamental. Fundamental in the sense that it also ties to its importance. Real estate is one of the most important things that men need, human needs. Basically, you'd say you need food, you need shelter. I mean, count the top three. It's there. In fact, top two, food, shelter. That's what you need basically. And there is no form of shelter. There is no area of life that this shelter doesn't tie into. You look at real estate, you're talking about where you're living, you're talking about where you're coming to work every day. It could be shop, it could be office, it could be wherever, where you're transacting basically. You need shelter for that. I know some people will say, oh, e-commerce and co. But whatever goods or services you're offering, you're actually still offering it from somewhere, a place, and it's real estate. So there are many arms, diverse parts to real estate that we've sort of overlooked over time. You know, there's been a lot of focus on high-end, middle income, housing, residential, blah, blah, blah. But there's the commercial parts, there's the retail parts, there's industrialization, e-commerce and all sorts coming up. Not coming up, it's always been there, but it's just that a lot of attention hasn't been given to it over time. But you know, especially with the industrialization, e-commerce and co, which got a lot of attention post-COVID or during the COVID era, entering the post-COVID era, it's showing us how diverse real estate actually is. Shoplets, service offices, service apartments. This is just a lot. Healthcare, even where your children are schooling and all sorts. You look at facilities management, property management, you just see that it's a very diverse and broad sector. And I'm happy that with this rebasing, because it just shows that the government is paying attention to what they need to pay attention to, and they're beginning to give adequate or give adequate importance and place to real estate and the many diverse areas that it involves, as opposed to just focusing on housing, housing, housing. And I'm not saying housing should be overlooked, but it's just that it underscores the fact that real estate is broad and plays a major role in the economy.
Thank you very much for that. It's good that we are seeing that real estate is not just housing. People, it's easy to just say real estate to think housing. There's so much more to it. And
you think land on the road to a fair and co is a lot more than that.
Thank you. So I just want to still build a bit on that, talking about the GDP numbers and all that. So I want to ask you your own estimation. How has this sector, how has it actually contributed to when it comes to the likes of job creation, urbanization, and broader economic growth in the last decade or even way back? How has the sector grown in its contribution and how has it evolved, particularly when it comes to employment generation? How has it contributed to job? Is it servicing just the elites, the educated, or does it service across different level of literacy? What do we see? How has it contributed to jobs, and not just jobs, even urbanization, the way communities grows in terms of population and the likes? How has real estate as a sector, how has it contributed to GDP in that light?
Interesting. You see, like I was saying earlier, real estate is broad, yes. At the same time, it's a full value chain that goes from one hand yet to another. So let's take, okay, pre-construction. When you have it in mind, it's not even in paper yet that, okay, I want to develop this particular project or I want to develop this particular building. It starts with you, you're thinking about it, you are going to express it to someone. Maybe you get an estate surveyor at that particular point that you discuss with, you share your ideas with, you run with feasibility and viability studies. That's a form of employment at that point. And then you're going to the next level. You're probably looking for land. The person gets the land for you, which you develop on. While you get the land, you're going to run your search on that land. You're going to do your due diligence and all sorts that is necessary. That's another value chain. Because at that point, you're going to be involving your legal people. You're going to be going to the government agencies where you need to carry out your due diligence and check. That's another layer of employment, you see? So by the time you've run through that, you're not going to be coming here all the way onto your still pre-construction into construction. You engage your architects, you engage the people that are involved in the design and all sorts. You engage, by the time you're doing construction, you get your piling company, you get the quantity surveyors, you get, just different artisans that come to play. At this point, you're already engaging from different streams or layers of income now. Cleaners, when you're done with your construction, janitors who are managing, FM who is handling the whole thing, your what else haven't I mentioned? Even your surveyors that will market the property, or your marketers, agents, be it street agents, be it whatever, it's a form of employment and it is a great contribution. So from pre-construction, construction, post-construction, the people that are handling everything that ties into every fabric of this development or of the real estate are being employed and they're being paid to do one thing or the other. You say, oh, okay, cleaner. Even in our houses, we have cleaners. It's a form of employment. And if you look at it well, it actually ties back into real estate providing one form of employment or the other. You have the gardeners there and all those things. That's just to show you that you're not employing just the middle income or the high income earners. You're actually diving to different streams or different levels of income now. And looking at it in terms of urbanization and it's beyond just housing. You have the commercial spaces that are coming up. You see that everyone is now trying to go smart, sustainable. It's changing the face of the street. It's changing the face of what the environment looks like. And then we're now going to the economy. Real estate is a major contributor into economy. And it also helps the government in the sense that the government could get some income from taxation. You're going to run your search and you're going to be paying one way or the other for that. That's something that goes back. It's a value chain, like I said earlier. Look at 30 December, for example. Short left. And if it is well harnessed, it is something that is a key income generating sector or area of real estate, if well harnessed. And at the end of the day, it's not just helping Nigeria, it's also putting us out there on a global scale. You see how the whole thing went with everybody talking about, 30 December, Lagos. And it's also going to help to recondition the thinking of people concerning what Nigeria looks like with insecurity and all sorts. So it's broad and it's a full value chain.
Right. I agree with you on that. It's an entire value chain and a lot to unpack there. So it's not just about even providing employment generation. It also have a way of, it's a sector that, if well harnessed, can also sort of facilitate Nigeria being a center of attraction, and that's really a good one. But I want us to talk about some of the most important things that I think are so I don't want to use the word impair the growth of the sector, but that are very, very important when it comes to the development of the sector. I want us to talk about financing and even capital flows, investment into the sector. So what are the innovative financing models that can be used to actually unlock more potential within the sector? For my opening remark, I mentioned that according to the data we have, over a close to 28 million house deficit has been recorded for Nigeria. So it shows that while the sector is vibrant and is getting better in terms of contribution to GDP, it is not yet fully unlocked or maximized. There's still a lot of potential within the sector. So when it comes to financing model, to come into what we can call affordable housing and the likes, what are the innovative financing models that we can unlock? Also, how can institutional investors like the banks, pension funds, DFI, development financial institutions, and the likes, how can they mobilize long-term investment or capital for the sector?
That's an interesting question. Okay, so for when you say innovative models, financing models, it's a bulk pack. You have the pension-backed ones, you have the REIT, like you've mentioned. And I wouldn't say it should be just one instrument. It has to be a blend of all these things. It should be a blend of all these financing models. But if I'm meant to pick one that I would say should top the charts, maybe pension-backed funding. Pension-backed funding in the sense that it's quite a huge sum of money that can be put into financing projects. Well, you see, the financing, it goes beyond something you can just say, oh, it's been an issue, it's been a teaching issue that we've been saying over the years. I think one of the ways the government, and I say government because we need the structure and core to come from them. One of the ways they can actually help is to de-risk it to an extent, de-risk that sector to an extent, in the sense that if there's proper structure and framework put in place to show guarantee. I mean, you don't want to go with just people's pension funds, almost 25 trillion, maybe a percentage of it, and then put it into the things, and you're not getting the right income, or you're not getting the right returns on your investment over a period of time. So if there's a way we can de-risk the sector such that there's a framework, work with the corporate, and it's going to be a blend of public-private partnership, such that if there's a way to ensure that once people put in this fund, they'll be able to get a return, and over a particular period of time, it could help to stimulate that sector. But of course, we need all these instruments because people have different risk appetites. And we're saying the pension funds, for example, it's still a risk if the sector is not well, if it is not well managed and proper structure is put in place to ensure that the right income and it goes to the right people. I know, yes, we're saying we're looking at the middle, low income earners, but that could involve social investments and all sorts, because housing is not cheap anywhere. It's not cheap. So like I was saying, it's about de-risking the sector, putting proper structure in place. Maybe you will get corporates or private organizations to be able to handle these things such that you're certain that once the project is completed or once it's almost completed, there are people who can take up the properties. And then how do we even ensure that the people on the demand side are able to finance the project by the time it's done? Not just the developer now financing it, but even the people that are at the demand end, they're able to afford this building or maybe spread their payments over a particular period of time. So these are things that is quite tricky. We'll get there, but we need government intervention. We need structure to be put in place. We need the proper framework, and we need to ensure that we do like a private partnership between a public-private partnership between the government and social investors. This funders and co to ensure that we get something that would be able to move the sector ahead.
Right. And I like that the way you concluded that it's we need all the instruments available. It's not just one form of investments that will actually unlock the full potential within that sector. And what you said about pension-backed funding, because of the volume of that funding, that would also help, in that regard. And investors that want to invest in real estate, they are not Santa Claus, right? The end is also to make profit of such an investment. So that also has to be put in place while you're thinking of affordable housing and the likes. I agree, but I want to also ask this build-up question, because when it comes to affordable housing or talking about investment really generally, within the real estate sector, there have been issues about regulations, about regulations and how investors can still navigate despite the barriers when it comes to the bureaucratic system. So land tilting, for instance, and registration are often cited as a major barrier to financing. And investors are often plagued with such a barrier. So, what specific reforms, in your own words and in your own experience, or digital solutions do you think can help reduce the risks for lenders or investors when it comes to harnessing the sector as a whole?
Okay, you've actually said it's digital registry. So I think to start this, we need to look at the key issues that is affecting these things. I think I'll start with time, the time it takes for you to actually get the necessary document. There's the cost area, there's transparency issue, and then there's the uncertainty on just different areas that are bordering around it. So if we can adopt things like blockchain technology that helps with getting to the root title, and helps track ownership across, even as it's changing and also the ownership is being tracked and then you are able to get to the root title, that could help. And then we're talking about digital registries and co. And I'd also say maybe, just maybe, the government could also um, use this technology to give more certainty as to the timing. I mean, if I know that, okay, everything I need will be out in 3 months, it gives me more comfort as an investor, as opposed to it just going there and it being cumbersome, and then I'm going to different departments, it's bureaucratic and also. So timing, use of technology to help with uncertainties around timing, and then to be able to be get to the root of the matter and track this thing. So it shows transparency. It also helps investors, I mean, to trust the system. Then I think with regards to the cost, maybe we could leverage on volume and just reduce the cost of some of these things. I mean, price of percentage, to make it easy for people to access, to make it easy for investors or even the normal man. I mean, it's not all the time you have investors that are requiring this thing. Some people just want a roof over their head. And I mean, they can't afford some of these things, or they don't even know how to go about it. And that's where you find issues coming up now with, okay, they're demolishing properties and all sorts. Some people have built in this place where they're not meant to build. Some of them just don't know, or they got tired of the system and then they just went ahead to do it. So if we can help with technology, and I know the government can do it because we've seen them do it in different sectors. For example, I saw in the news today that they're not talking about you getting your passport, about turning out 5,000 passports in a day. I don't know if that's in the entire country or per state or per office, whatever. But if you're using technology to do some of these things, we can actually leverage on that and use it to actually just decide, untangle or detangle these things and make life easy for people. Let us say, for example, we're talking about the digital house numbering to be able to also help with these things. So it's important that we engage technology, digital blockchain technology, digital registries, and all sorts, just to make it easy for everyone.
Good. Digital has the way of solving a lot of problems, and it's high time we look that side and fully leverage digital platforms and solutions in general to help us reform the entire sector. So I think you've touched on the next question I wanted to ask, which was around affordable housing and how affordable housing is still a very huge challenge. How developers can, if you can still probably re-emphasize some of the things you've said, actually take a minute or two to do that. How can developers balance profitability with accessibility for middle and low income earners? Some would even argue that we no longer have middle income earners, right, in Nigeria. So how do someone that just desires to have a roof over his head and desire to build for himself, how do we do, how can we balance that profitability? And for even investors, so that even though you are investing hugely on this sector and to build housing, how is it leased out in a form or even sold in a way that is affordable to the middleman on the street, middle and low income earners? What can be done in between that? Because I believe there's a major gap, between the demand and the supply when it comes to real estate and housing in Nigeria.
Okay. I think the first question we should ask ourselves is what is affordable? Because what's affordable to me might not be affordable to the next person. That's there. Then that balance is a very long one. I mean, as a developer, you're out there for profits, you're out there to make generate income and also. And sometimes it's even beyond then generating income. Access to funding itself is very expensive, really very expensive. So I'd say for us to actually have that balance, it's not really the developers. The developers, yes, they have a role to play, but let's even put them on the side for a split second. Maybe we should focus on the government. If the government could make land available, and when we're saying land available, it doesn't have to be in the city center. Everyone cannot be in the city center because, of course, that's more expensive. But we're looking at the fringes, those outskirts and co. If you can make land available with infrastructure in place, and then partner with some of these developers, because by the time you remove the cost of land alone, you've taken out like 30% of the cost of development. So if the government is seeing it as something that should be done, we could do that. Make land available for them.
Sorry to cut you there. When you say available, you mean not just in quantity, like the land is definitely available. You're talking about in affordability, right?
So now you pick locations and then you partner with the developers and say, on this parcel of land, we want, and it has to be somewhat like social housing. You're not looking to build anything grand or whatever. So you're saying, okay, on this parcel of land, we want approximately 600 units. So you've given the developer the land, theirs is to develop it, and then you both come together and, of course, making funding available as well, maybe through social investors, because we still do have people that are like social investors that could come in and make funding easy to access. So, things like that. So you have like 1,000 units, you have 600 units that are going to be sold at quite low prices as opposed to the market price and everything that a developer would use if I, as a developer, have to get the land or partner with another private investor who owns land in doing GD and all such, things like that. So that's important. Also, the social investments that I mentioned as well, looking for social investors that could invest in projects like this. I know of a foundation, they actually cater to two caters in real estate. They cater to the HNIs, who are the high net worth individuals. So they build something really grand for them. And then they take some of those income that they've gotten, a percentage, and then they put it to low income housing. So they build in places like Ugondo, that are like outskirts and cool. They build units there, and you're not looking. You're looking to provide basic human needs, shelter for these people. You don't need anything. You don't need the Bosch and all those kind of funny appliances and core tech in there. You just need it. Of course, it should be livable, very livable. Let's not forget that. So they then cater to the low end of the market, build something nice, but even the affordable stuff, some of these people are unable to afford it. Then as they've developed those units for them, you can now look at funding for the people on the demand side now, the people that will be buying the units. We have things like the MRIF that the Ministry of Finance came up with. I checked MRIF at the point and I was like, okay, some of these units are actually still quite expensive. The units that are listed, properties that are listed on the website are probably still expensive for some people. But then when I reached out to them, they say, okay, you have an apartment or something that you've gotten, you can also try to upload or put up these things. So if someone gets like a unit that sells at 10 million naira and you're unable to finance it, things like this could be explored. And 9%, it used to be 12%, but they recently brought it to 9%, and then you spread it over approximately 20 years and all sorts. So what I'm saying is it's a thing that should be looked at from the government's hand, first and foremost, and then you then have bringing the financiers, the social investors, the developers. One thing again, I think the developers can do, but this, I don't think it's going to bring about a whole lot of change, is to maybe find ways that they could probably partner together and maybe ship things in together. Probably it could be discounted at that point. I'm just thinking, it's just a thought in my head. The other thing we could do is localize materials here, and just make it more affordable and easy to access. And then also probably look at alternative construction materials that could be less expensive. But in all this, access to funding is very critical to the developer. And the government can also help with providing the land and partnering with people. I know Lagos State government does some of those things, but access even for the people is also still an issue. And then, sensitization, making people aware that they probably might be able to access some of these things. Yeah.
Wow, a lot to unpack there. The first thing you said, which is, what do we even mean by affordable, right? So affordable might not be, just one definition might not define what affordable is, because it could be relative. It's not an absolute definition. And also awareness, some people might not even know that opportunities like this exist, that can even make them position themselves in a place to take advantage of such. Then what you talked about, partnership, I think it's very important, and that shows that there's still a lot to be done within the sector. I want us to take the conversation further and discuss probably some of the reforms and the impact on the sector. With the inflation, FX volatility, I mean, one of the sectors that was really it with FX, aside the manufacturing sector, I believe real estate was also one of those sectors. The high interest rate environment, you also alluded to the fact that credit is very expensive right now. So you said, I want to ask, how resilient has the sector been in today's macroeconomic environment?
I think in answering that question, I'll first say how resilient are Nigerians themselves. We're resilient people who are born ready, built for something. So real estate, I'd say, is actually quite resilient. The sector has shown us that it's resilient, and we see this resilience in the fact that there's still the gap that is being filled. There's the supply that is being met with demand, because you can see that people are building and people are buying. We thank our diaspora people, we thank other investors that are actually purchasing. But the sector has shown that it's actually quite resilient. But I think beyond resilience with the sector and as with Nigeria itself, maybe one thing we should look at is growth. How do we go beyond resilience and keep building resilience against some of these darts that are thrown against us? Growth, how do we, attain growth and remain stable and then keep growing and expanding? And it still boils down to access to funding, access to capital. If there's just capital and localization of maybe building materials and it could help us to be a lot more stable and those things. But I think the sector is actually very resilient. And then you'll see that some landlords, especially in the commercial sector, in the high-end residential sector, you find them quoting in dollars simply because they've been bonds. So they quote in dollars, yes, you pay in naira, but just to also help to bridge the gap and to create some cushion for them in case there's any more devaluation or whatever. But real estate is actually very resilient, and we've seen quite a number of movements in the markets in the past few months.
Right. I think another take home is localizing some of the materials, building materials. I think it's very important. But for real estate generally, it's generally perceived as a very expensive sector, and the reasons because of the inputs in that sense. So probably if you start looking inwards, I can't even speak to maybe we have the capacity to do that as an economy, but probably when we start looking inwards, that would
You'll be
significantly drive
surprised
down.
actually. Yeah,
Mm,
you'll actually be surprised at what we can do if we have enabling environments and opportunities. And I'm sure it's probably there in someone's mind. They probably haven't fully amassed it or gotten the opportunity to actually express some of these things. You'll be surprised.
right, right. Looking forward to the possibility of that. So, still to build on the issue with resilience and how the sector had evolved in the last probably 1 or 2 decades. So, which regulatory reform in your experience now, such as the Land Use Act, taxation, and then building approvals, which of these reforms do you think would have the immediate impact on unlocking growth in the sector? If you think by priority, if focus is zoomed in on this particular reform, we would see it will trigger a significant multiplier impact, not just in employment or affordability, but even economic growth as a whole within the sector.
Hmm. Like I said earlier, that if we want to attain growth, we need capital and funding. I know we've said a lot about land use act and also, but I think if we're able to make the whole building approval thing more transparent and easy to access, it could actually give investors some comfort to probably bring in more income, more funding, and all sorts into the sector. So maybe yes, building approvals should be made easy to do and digitized and all sorts. It could also help. Then maybe some form of tax incentives as well. Real estate is already very expensive. Then by the time you had some of these taxes and all sorts of things, so yeah, so I'd say a reform, deep reform in the building approval area should be looked at, and some form of tax incentives as well.
Right, right. So I also want to ask you now. I know you mentioned the use of technology. When it comes to making it easier for some of these approval processes and the likes. So I want to ask, what are the global best practice when it comes to use of technology to transform real estate sector? And do you think Nigeria is actually ready to adopt such technologies? What are the things that you think they used in the Western world and that has reshaped their own real sector generally and also impacted the economy? So do you think Nigeria as a country, we are ready for that? Do we even have the infrastructure to build on that? What do you think we can do looking at global best practices when it comes to leveraging technology in the real estate sector?
The funny thing is, we are actually people that adapt easily, and Nigeria is actually tech hungry. We're tech hungry people. So you find that quite a number of technologies are actually available here, maybe not as much for what is required. Things like online marketing of properties, things like the vendoring system to make it easier for people to access power and all sorts within their property. Things like even um, vendors, construction material vendors coming together to make it easy for developers to access building materials, even with credit and also things like blockchain technology. They're actually here. I think it's not about are the people ready to use this technology. It's also about what is the government doing to make it smooth, to make it efficient for people to use some of these technologies, especially when you're talking about things like digitalization of the land registry and also, and how are they making it enabling for people to actually express and use these technologies? Because really, yeah, we're doing quite a lot with technology. I know we can improve and expand on them, but we're doing a lot with it. But it's about the readiness of the government as well. It's not necessarily the people now. But I also know that once the government is ready, or once they actually see it very well, they would actually run with it. Which I was saying, for example, we've seen with the old passport thingy and some other sectors. look at tax, for example. Suddenly, our tax identification number has to be linked with our bank account and all sorts. So where there's a will, there's a way. So adapting to these things are not the issue. And I know that we actually have some of these ideas already around in the market that people are actually using very well. So I think we're good to go. Actually, it's just to build further on it and expand it.
Right. So we're heading towards the end of the conversation, and I must say that it has been really insightful. Thank you so much for bringing your rich and broad perspective on the sector. So
Thank
now
you.
let's see Nigeria now. Beyond Lagos and Abuja, probably also Port Harcourt. They are some of the major cities when it comes to real estate and likes. Maybe that's what I think. So, what other secondary cities do you think holds one of the biggest potential for growth? Where are we not looking at? What other cities do you think can be leveraged? Investments can go into. Now, I'm talking about specific now. Do you think we can actually leverage aside, say, the likes of Abuja or Lagos or even Port Harcourt? What else do you think we should be looking at when it comes to biggest potential for growth in real estate?
If we look at Southwest, we can look at places like Ibadan. We can look at Abeokuta. And you see, especially with the railroad infrastructure, it's, excuse me, it's easy to actually look at some of these places. With the railroad infrastructure, it's easy to leverage on that for people to actually, cities outside the country, you find that London, for example, you have people that are working in London, but not living in London. And then they use the train and come from different areas into the city center. So you don't have to live within the city center. It's like a concentric zone where you can actually move outward, expand outward. But once it's easy for you to actually transport yourself to work and also, it makes it easier. So looking at Abeokuta and Oyo, we can look at Ibadan, we can look at things like that. And then you look at the other places like Aba, you look at Enugu. Aba, for example, we have hubs where they develop and manufacture whole sorts. Why haven't we leveraged on that? These are things we can leverage on and make them also city centers that can actually be built around a particular form of maybe manufacturing or what they do. Enugu. Then I'd look at for the north, I'd say, places like Kano, Kaduna, because they have volume of people. And then because it's also like the center, there are major outposts there. So yes, we should look at places like that.
Yeah, thank you. So that we are mindful of what we call smart cities. We're mindful of urbanization and the
Mm-hmm.
likes. You know. I have one more question. Before then, I just wanted to also talk about building smart cities. I know the likes of Lagos. We already is there a national framework that helps to achieve that, or is just investor per investor, or is there a body? Is there a regulatory body that is ensuring that buildings are green, they are climate friendly, they are sustainable, and just generally we are looking at building in a way that is smart and is conducive. What do you think of that? Generally within this real estate sector in Nigeria.
Okay, so I won't say a regulatory body, but of course there are many professional bodies. For example, IFC from the World Bank, they are in charge of EDGE certification, EDGE, which is about building green. We also have the LEED certification. And you see, the good thing with EDGE in particular is that even while your building has been completed, you can actually still attain green certification for it, depending on the necessary changes and amendments you're able to make within the building to ensure that it is sustainable. And then it also uses your location as a benchmark. Okay, let's see how much improvement you can do to get you to get the green certification, things like that. So it's actually there. And it's funny that people think you're talking about sustainable, you're talking about building smart cities and also, and they think it's really far off, or you have to have loads of grand ideas and such. I know there are places of the building materials you use, yes, and probably some of them are not in country yet. But things like solar panels, your window orientation, infusing green, and changing your taps, water taps, and all sorts are actually just things that are quick wins and easy for us to do to ensure that we actually attain green buildings, and then we're able to save on energy, we're able to save on water and all those things, and ensure that we're actually building sustainably. So the what IFC and Hedge is doing is actually just to encourage people and make the awareness to be there for people that, okay, you've not built, or you've built, you're at a particular level, you can actually attain green, and that on the long run it actually saves you more costs. It saves you more costs. If you're developing to sell, it actually makes your building stand out, offices and all sorts. So these things are there. But in terms of regulatory, yes, we have the Green Building Council of Nigeria. We do have that here, but being stiff regulations and also, no, that's not in place yet. But I think it's something we can work to attain, and then with the government to just encourage people to just put some of these minute things in places as we're building, or even as we build, to ensure that it's green. But people are actually doing it. Quite a number of people are doing some of these things. I mean, you go to hospitals where they have the old style taps, you find that they started changing some of these things. I mean, and thanks to the subsidy removal, quite a number of people are now looking at solar panels and how to manage energy and be more efficient.
Right. So this where we say the general sense that eventually it's aligning with what the best practices are, and people are open to building sustainably, climate
Yeah,
friendly, and in the real sense, people just have this mindset that it's more expensive, right? But if you look
mm,
at it relatively, I don't think it is. It's just about a shift in what you believed, and I like the compliance level. But we would like to see a more formidable regulatory body to monitor that, so that would just in another decade or two we have a climate resistant environment, and we have smart cities as we all desire to have it.
and the funny thing is that Africa is like where we actually need this a lot, because I don't know, but for most other parts of the country or other parts of the world where there's a lot of development, they've sort of been shaped in a way. Yeah, they're trying to infuse some sustainability, and seeing the climate change that is happening now, we have to find a way to actually make sustainable development work in Africa, one way or the other.
Agree. I definitely agree with you. Thank you so much. So lastly, I just want to get your thoughts, or to project ahead what the sector would look like. Say, let's take a 10-year window by 2035. What do you think the Nigerian real estate sector would look like in terms of inclusiveness, in terms of competitiveness, in terms of affordability, and even integration into global real estate markets? What do you think? And given the current trajectory and experience, where do you think we are heading in the next, say, 10 years?
Okay. Um, Integration, competitiveness, inclusiveness. 10 years. I agree. 10 years is quite a long time, as it were, medium. But at the same time, I don't think, maybe I'll say regional, maybe regional scale, not global. And we can look at areas like industrial hubs, things like the deep sea port, if well managed, well assessed, well with structures put in place well, and all those things. Um, Nigeria could be a hub, an industrial hub for West Africa. So that puts us in regional, as part of the regional players, competitiveness when you're looking at regionally, and also then maybe institutional development. It would pay a lot more attention to it. We have things like the rugby school that is in Eco Atlantic City. You have the Charter House. These are institutional development, and there's a whole lot of back work that is going on in keeping these places, managing them. You have things like Evercare, healthcare facility, and you see the way it's actually interwoven with real estate. Things like the Wellington College and all sorts in Alaro City. So these are cities, and then you're looking at institutional developments there. So that's it's there, but I still don't think it's going to get to the global competitiveness level. But at least it puts us out there. Then what else? I also think that we could consider things like localization, as we've mentioned earlier. If we are able to get funding from within us and maybe from the diaspora markets. In the past we've had funding that has come that helped with the retail sector, that helped with the grade A offices from SA. Some of those people are still bearing the brunt of some of those developments. I mean, look at ShopRite, for example, those kind of things. But I think if we're able to look inwards and generate income within ourselves, it could also help. Remember, we're Nigerians, we are the only ones that can grow our country and develop our country. So diaspora funding and those things could also help expand. But taking us globally, maybe we're not quite there yet, but I don't know, we never can tell. I'm not I'm not a prophet. But some of these things could help. So we need to build and grow the sector, build and grow the country. But we'll definitely get there over time.
Right. I believe that 10 years is long enough for us to actually do that, given that the sector has already proven to be resilient and the sector itself has proven to be a major driver of economic growth. And then, like you said, Nigerians generally, we are techie savvy, so we love technology. So leveraging technology also would be at our advantage and would also put us out there.
So another thing that could actually really drive growth and inclusiveness for us in this sector is actually the data centers. I just remembered, as you mentioned, that we are tech hungry people. Data centers, and we have quite a number of them here in Nigeria. So, if proper infrastructure and developments are put in place for data centers and all sorts within the country, it could also put us out there. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much, and I agree with you. So to our viewers, here you have it. That's another very insightful conversation with Tomilola Bisaleko, who, like I said, is one of the members of our board of directors. She's an expert in real estate. You can check our website to see her profile. There you see some of the things she has done. So thank you all for joining us for another rich and insightful conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. To our viewers again, I would want to encourage you to check our page, our YouTube page. We've had series of discussions, over the past couple of months. We even had a deep dive into the GDP itself, the rebased GDP, the impact on the Nigerian economic structure. You can just check it. We've had conversations on tax reforms, the impact on businesses, individuals, and even government itself. You can also check our YouTube page to access that. We've spoken about cybersecurity. Just check us out. You will see a lot of things to learn from. So thank you. Remain connected till I come again your way next time. Have a good evening and enjoy your day. All right. Bye, everyone.